Right, welcome to episode 3 of the Strength Season RX podcast. Just me today. And I want to start with acknowledging I understand how wanky this is, right? I get doing a solo podcast is a weird thing to do, but the chances are, if you follow me, you might not know my entire story. You might not know how Strength Season online coaching came to be. You might not know my history in the sport of CrossFit and how I came to be a coach. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time telling you guys my story. If you are not into that, go and check out one of my other podcasts or videos. If you're here, strap in for the ride, 20, 30 minutes, we won't go for too long. So, my name is Amir. My name is Amir Khan, and if you grew up in the 2000s like I did, you'll know that's problematic because there was a famous British boxer also called Amir Khan who was massive around the Olympics, and I would have got that joke 100 million times a day, being like, oh, are you a boxer? Same as a boxer. And I'm like, ha 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 ha. Yes, unfortunately my name is the same as a boxer, but what you don't know is that I'm half Pakistani, and Amir Khan is like the most common name. It's like someone in the UK here being called John Smith. So as funny as that joke is, it's a very common Pakistani name. I am a CFL2 trainer, a British weightlifting level 2 coach, an athlete still as a master, head coach of Strength Season online coaching, which has been my full-time gig now for coming up to 4 years. But let me take you way, way, way back and talk you through the origin story. Number one, I'm 37 years old. I was literally born in the 80s, right? 1988. Oldest of 5 siblings, all of which are into fitness, right? My brother is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Sarah is a semi-finals CrossFit athlete, like top 1% worldwide after this quarterfinals. And Natasha is an elite level weightlifter. She qualified essentially for like the British Championships, but couldn't go because she fell pregnant, but come from a family of people into sport. I grew up playing all sports at school, but mostly fell into rugby union as I was growing up, and then funnily enough, rugby league when I went to university. And at school it was really funny because I was really like a split personality because I had 2 things that I really loved. And the first one was sport, rugby, being a teammate, like running into people at high speed and, you know, what comes with all the things of sport. And then the second part of me was being a nerd, right? IT, like computers. I used to have my friends around my house and we'd literally do like LAN parties. If you don't know what a LAN party is, it's local area network where we would all bring our PCs, like connect them together and play World of Warcraft, Red Alert 2, Age of Empires. And so it's just really like, split part of me where I was like a extroverted rugby playing guy who loved to play sport and then, you know, go on the piss afterwards, and then the introvert who would like spend hours and hours playing World of Warcraft, listening to alternative music in my bedroom, and just being a fucking nerd, right? Going to uni, I had a choice then, right? So I went through school, went to a grammar school in Shropshire, and I had 2 choices. I could do IT and probably, you know, potentially work with computers, programming, like earn potentially good money, or do sport and PE, which was a thing I was most passionate about. It's much of a less like well thought of degree, especially when your dad is like an immigrant doctor and wants your son to probably also be a doctor or work in the NHS as well. But I did not have that level of academia. So I went to uni and I studied sport coaching. I went to UWIC in Cardiff. It's now called Cardiff Met. Didn't have the grades to get into like a Loughborough or a Bath, but at the time, Cardiff Met, I think it still is a really good university to go to study sport. I played rugby there. I got my degree. I got a 2-1 in sports coaching, around all the things that come with going to university. So getting drunk, playing rugby, turning up to some lectures, still in the face paint from the night before, and just had a fucking awesome time. And it was here at university that I really fell in love with the gym, weight training and training specifically, because I'd always known that you had to do fitness to get better at your sport. I played rugby. I was naturally like a bigger, stockier guy. Like I'm 6'2", 100 kilos, and I kind of have been that since I was fucking 14, basically. So I didn't really lift weights in school up until I was 18, went to university, and literally my first ever roommate at the accommodation I was assigned, a guy called Josh, was really into the gym. Shout out Josh. So I started lifting weights with him. And when I say lifting weights with him, what I mean is bodybuilding, push-pull legs, and legs being, if we could be arsed, it was basically bicep curls, bench press, back day, leg day, chest day, shoulder day, arm day, and just trying to bench as much as possible and trying to be nothing to do with function. It was just trying to get fucking massive, as all like 18, 19-year-old boys probably want to do. Love university, got a load out of it, did some studying as well as drinking. I actually stayed on for one more year after my undergrad to study a master's in coaching science, mostly because I wanted to delay real life and play rugby with my guy friends for another year. I had really no idea what I wanted to do, right? That was part of the reason that I stayed on uni, because I didn't know what I wanted to do in the real world. I didn't really have a calling. I just knew I was super passionate about sport, health, fitness, coaching, but I didn't have like a career path like a lot of my friends did. And at the end of my master's degree, I worked with some lecturers to do my like dissertation and things like that, and an internship came up in elite sport at Newport Gwent Dragons. And if you know anything about like the Welsh top level of rugby union, they're one of the regions, and it's the highest level in Welsh rugby that you can be, apart from obviously in the national setup, right? So it was an unpaid internship in strength and conditioning. So I was buzzing because strength and conditioning, training, gym was what I wanted to do. Obviously not buzzing because it was fucking unpaid. So how would I make a living? And they kind of like span this yarn about how, oh yeah, you can coach like some kids camps whilst you're there. We'll kind of get you a job in the gym and things like that. It came with a house. I obviously didn't get a house, but it came with accommodation. I stayed on site at Roddy Parade with 2 academy athletes, one of which has gone on to get a bunch of caps for Wales. But it was unpaid. You were basically just the lackey, right? I was like in with the academy lads, put them through workouts. I was like doing like urine tests to see how hydrated they were, tracking players' body weight. It was a pre-season, so you were tracking their body weight to make sure, you know, the skinnier guys were bulking up or the heavier guys were leaning out. But there's a really funny story. So I'm 21 and I get fired from this job like 3 months in. It was meant to be a 12-month internship. I got fired 3 months in, and I'll tell you the story. So I'm 21. I've moved to Newport from Cardiff. Don't know anyone. Don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Trying to make friends as like a young kid in this setup full of actual grown adults, and got close to some of the academy kids and also like the younger players that were around my age, like 19, 20, 21. And if you've been a part of a rugby team, you'll know that they do an initiation. So they did an initiation in Cardiff. All the new players and me and a few of the other like junior staff members all got pissed or whatever. We had a good time. And it was that time of year where the 3 months of pre-season were over and it was going into the start of the actual rugby season itself. And it was also coincided with like September as like Freshers Week. Cardiff, massive university city. There was a lot of Freshers events, and some of the players that were my age, like 18, 19, 20, 21, were trying to organise nights out. And it was the dawn of social media, and in particular, Twitter was the big one back then. And you talk with people on Twitter, not in DMs. You just at someone, and this was like 2011 maybe, so fucking ages ago. And we talk as players and staff and as coaches and stuff, just at player name, what are you doing this week? Should we go out in Cardiff? And we had this great initiation night out, so we organised another one just over Twitter, which obviously was a stupid thing to do. And I was working in a professional rugby setup, organising like essentially to get pissed with some players that are my age. Essentially, I was the very easy one to cut loose as an unpaid intern, and they were like, yeah, we can't be organising other players to get pissed. The players just got a slap on the wrist and they made like an example of me, and I was let go from that role. And funny enough, it's the only job I've ever been let go of in my life. But it was a blessing in disguise. I moved back to Cardiff, moved in with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I needed a job, right? I'd finished uni, I'd failed at this internship. I was like, I need some money. I'm surviving, like calling my mom every week, being like, please need some cash. And I just needed something. And that's when I got my first ever job in a gym. It was called Fitness First in Cardiff East. I needed any job to pay the rent. And the one that came up was membership sales consultant. And I was like, doesn't matter, need a job, it's a foot in the door. And I knew one or two of the lads that were there already, got the job, right? I thought I'd be in a gym, training people, doing stuff on the gym floor. What they meant was membership sales consultant was top floor, windowless office, essentially a call center job. You're just phoning people, trying to get them to join the gym, trying to get people to download day passes, trying to convince people to just join on shady membership rates. Like, whilst I was at Fitness First, they were actually on Watchdog, which, if you don't know, is like a program about scandals like 10, 15 years ago. And they're on national TV because of how they sold memberships, like peer pressure, selling gym memberships, and just shady tactics. But it got me in the door, and from then, slowly over the next year or two, I got out of the office, I started teaching some classes, I started doing some fitness qualifications, started doing some inductions, started working on reception, essentially just mucked around and did every single job in the gym and in the fitness industry. And it was this time in about 2012, a bunch of the personal trainers at this gym in Cardiff also did CrossFit. And I was slowly stopped playing rugby. I'd left university, so I couldn't play for the uni team anymore. I was training just for the heck of it, but I'm a very competitive person, and the thing I loved about rugby was the competitive element, and just going to the gym, doing bodybuilding was a bit boring. So when someone was like, oh, there's this thing called CrossFit where like you can compete, you can race people, you try and beat your own time, there's like a competitive element from it, I was sold. Where the gym was, Fitness First Cardiff, Fitness First Cardiff, CrossFit Cardiff was like a 2-minute drive down the road, or like maybe a 15-minute walk. And a bunch of the trainers were already there. One of them was like, do you want to come down? I was like, yeah, fuck it. It can't be that hard. I'm super fit, right? Everyone knows where the story leads. I can't remember the first workout. I just know that it definitely had wall balls, definitely had running, and I think there was another movement, like maybe a kettlebell swing or something super basic. But I saw it on the board. Yeah, I'll fucking hammer this. Was dead on the fucking floor. One of my first workouts I remember was Helen. So 3 rounds time, 400-meter run. I think it's 21 swings, 12 pull-ups, or it might be the other way around. Floored me again. But I fell in deep. I fucking loved it. Much like anyone that's in their first 6 months of CrossFit, like, you just fucking fall deep in the cult and love it. Like, on the floor, looking up every single day, like, what the fuck has just happened? Made loads of gains just by fucking around and finding out, jumping in classes. Very lucky in that the first gym that I went to, CrossFit Cardiff, was run by a guy called Davs Dennis, and he was a European regionals level athlete. So the gym I happened to walk into down the road had one of the best athletes in Europe there, and also he was like a CrossFit flow master, so would teach the level 1s and level 2s. So a guy who coaches, and a guy who was one of the best athletes in Europe was like coaching my classes. Like, I'd like looked out. Had really good first few months experiences, made loads of friends. Guy at our box, Elliot Simmons, left, obviously went to the games a few times. Ryan, Franco, did my first competition, and then crucially got my level 1. So I was obviously working in commercial fitness and had my fitness qualifications in like a Globo gym sense, like level 2, level 3 PT. But I got my CrossFit level 1 in, I think, January 2014, which started like the coaching journey. I didn't actually coach in CrossFit Cardiff. About 2 years after starting CrossFit, I moved up to Birmingham, back to where my family are from. And when I left CrossFit Cardiff and I told them I was moving to Birmingham, Daz was like, oh, go to Second City CrossFit, go speak to Mike Holmes. So one of the first things I did was that. Mike, very, very good athlete, very, very good coach, kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and we became like training partners for the longest time. Started coaching. I was coaching CrossFit classes, coaching weightlifting classes, and this is where like my competitive era started. Unlocked all movements, so like muscle ups, ring bar, handstand walking. Some of the competitions I've written on this iPad at the time, like Strength and Depth, RIP, did Sid Origins a few times. British Championships, if you remember that one, it was a massive comp sponsored by MyProtein. Like the Athlete Games, Battle for the Beast, which was predated the European Championships, Tribal Clash, I think still exists after all that controversy, Battle for the Midlands, which was a local comp in Northampton, Battle of Britain, which was in Birmingham, just so many competitions, and I just fucking did them all. European Inferno, which was then rebranded to Inferno Pairs, then went under Sid, and now I don't think it exists anymore. Just so many competitions in that, like, my formative years that would coincide with what I guess you call like the golden era of CrossFit, like 2014 to 2018. Just like CrossFit was on top of the world, growing all the time. Froning was a champ, then Fraser. Just fucking loved it. And I lived this like dual life between working in Globo gyms. So I worked for like a Fitness First, then a JD Gyms, then a Pure Gym, then a DW, etc. and training, competing, coaching, and just for loving CrossFit. We'll go to my Globo gym and, you know, do the health and safety checks and make sure all the members are on the spin bikes and body pump and did inductions and did a little bit of PT, and then came out my Globo gym and just fucking loved everything about CrossFit, which is a bit culty, a bit like counterculture. It's not the same as the Globo gym stuff. It wasn't like these days where hybrid training and high rocks is kind of massive. Like, you were still weird for doing functional training when I did it. And it was around this time that I started PTing. Started having some in-person and personal training clients, both in Globo gym and both functional fitness and CrossFit. And I was still using functional fitness type movements for my clients that I had in the Globo gym. One-to-one strength and conditioning sessions. People would ask me for programming online, and I would just charge absolutely nothing to just send them like some pretty shit programming. Like, hey, today do Fran, the next day do 5 sets of 5 back squats. And I was kind of learning on the go, just like fucking around and finding out in my own training and fucking finding out in my own programming. But it was only ever like a weird side hustle. I never thought it would end up being my full gig. And then 2020, I don't know if you can even say this on YouTube anymore, but COVID happened, right? I moved back to my parents when it happened. I packed a bag for 2 weeks, been like, yep, 2 weeks. You know, I think Boris Johnson would go on the news every 2-3 weeks that it would get extended and extended and extended. But I packed one bag, 2 weeks of clothes, thinking, yep, it'll be over soon. That's good. Obviously was wrong. I was very lucky in that my parents' house have like a big outdoor area, and it was like the warmest few weeks and few months on record ever. We managed to like scrimp and get some kit. I had a bike erg at the time. I had a bike erg, a GHD, a dumbbell, a box, some kettlebells, and just some kit. And there was nothing else to do but train. I was furloughed, so I was physically not working. I worked at a gym at the time and borrowed some kit. I took it back, don't worry. So we had a lot of kit and had a lot of time. So me, my sister, my family would train. And that's when Sarah actually picked up CrossFit in 2012. I also went through a little bit of my own weight loss journey. So I think I lost about 10 kilos because I was living like a full-time athlete, right? I was doing most of the time like a session in the morning, maybe some extra walking and extra biking just to fucking kill off some time in the day. And I think I lost about 10 kilos. And I documented this journey, not thinking I was going to do anything with it, but that was when me and my sister then were like, there's something in this. Like, I'm programming online. I've been through my own weight loss journey. People ask me how I did it. And so it was my first like foray into online coaching. And I'm pretty sure the first one I called Quarantine, because quarantine, I thought I was genius at the time. And then it ended up being like, I can't remember if it was 8-week lean or lean in 8. It was a very like on the nose title. And just started advertising it because I'd been through a weight loss journey and I had some before and after photos. I kind of ended up picking up my first set of online clients and online group programming through 8-week lean in 8, quarantine, and me and my sister worked together. And it was super fun. It ended up us doing like meetups. It ended up me running that course like maybe 3-4 times. But then I think the thing I was most passionate about was CrossFit, weightlifting, gymnastics, not really fat loss and that type of thing. So I think once the restrictions ended and we went back to regular work, I kind of stopped doing them. I knew after when COVID started that I didn't really want to go back to working in gyms. Like I was in management, and you know, you get into the health and fitness industry because you want to help people get healthier and fitter. But I was doing pool tests. I was doing health and safety. I was being shouted at by aqua women. I was like, you know, managing cleaners and staff, the stuff that I didn't want to do. I wanted to help people get fitter, stronger, better. So I left the gym that I worked for and I ended up working for Peloton. If you remember, they had a huge increase in lockdown. We're selling like bikes, treadmills, really expensive subscription. I had a better work-life balance because I didn't have to open the gym at 5-6 a.m. or close the gym at 9-10 p.m. It was kind of like normal hours, and it was a pretty cushy job. And I could train outside of it, still had a few programming athletes. But the pull and the safety of that monthly salary was too much to leave. Like I wanted to do what I'm doing now. I just didn't have, like, knowing that I would get X amount a month and being employed and the job wasn't very difficult was like what was keeping me in, even though I wasn't fully passionate about it, like selling $2,000 bikes and $3,000 to $4,000 treadmills. But then Marbella 2022 happened, and this was a huge turning point. So I've told this story a few times, but I'll tell it again. It was the first ever Marbella Championships that I competed at. I was literally walking to the beach and my phone went off, and I was getting missed calls from my area manager. And I was like, I'm not answering this. I'm on holiday. Decline. And then like after the multiple calls came in, like third, fourth, fifth, I was like, I'm going to call her, I'm going to ring back or just answer to tell her that I'm on holiday. Picked up the phone and it was like, hi Amir, I need to read this pre-prepared HR statement to you. And obviously I'm like, what the fuck does this mean? And essentially, the company was shutting down all the stores across the UK. And my one that I just moved to, that I got a promotion, like a good cushy increase in salary to get to, was the first one going. In 2 or 3 months' time, the showroom would cease to exist, and we were being made redundant, which obviously was a huge fucking spanner in the works. But there was an upside. As part of the redundancy payment, and I had like a decent job, I got a payout of money, and it equated to just over 3 months' salary. So I competed at Marbella in RX, had a great time, loved that competition, going again back this year for like maybe the 4th time. And when I got back to the UK, I had another couple months left in this role before they shut the gym. But I was like, right, the showroom I'm working at is going to shut, the job I'm having is going to shut. I get 3 months salary. So when it shuts, you've got 3 months, Amir, to go all in on this online coaching thing that you've wanted to do for ages. If it works, fucking happy days, that's you done. If it doesn't work, you can always get back to a gym. And I kind of envisioned, and was still at the time writing my CV, expecting that online coaching wouldn't work and that I'd be getting a job back in a Pure Gym or a JD Gym or another operator, right? I was updating my CV, getting ready to give it to gyms to go back to them. But I was like, at least I have a few months off. I'll try this online coaching thing, see if it works. But started strength season, October 2022, back on the wall, like had an incentive to fucking send it. I hired a mentor straight away. I had no idea what I was doing running a self-employed business. I'd only ever been employed. I'd only ever had, everything done for you. I'd not had to deal with tax and marketing and finances and strategy and any of this stuff. I knew how to coach people. I had no fucking clue how to run a business. And the mentorship did help with that. I charged half of what I do now. I was charging pittance. I was still using TrueCoach, so still using the same app that I use. And I just fucked around and find out. But the one thing I did really give a shit about was getting people fantastic results. So regardless if the business and the background and the processes weren't too great, my athletes were getting great results. And 3 months later, after that point, I was earning about the same salary as I did my job, and I didn't need to go back to the gym. And that's been since October 2022. And now we are nearly 4 years into strength season. And it's absolutely crazy. So I've been a full-time online coach now for just under 4 years. So this October, it'll be my 4-year anniversary. Have just over 50 athletes on board in the program at the moment. We have our first abroad training day in September. So in about 5 weeks' time, we're taking 17 athletes over to Ireland. First time we ever run anything not in England. I've got 9 or 10 athletes competing in Marbella this year, which is like my 4th time competing. Twice RX, one as a master, one as maybe it's my 5th time. Yeah, twice as RX, one as a master, one on a team. Yeah, and I'm going master again. So I think it's my 5th year on RX. And we're at the point where I'm very close to being full, right? We're considering a second coach at the end of this year. Conversations are going on in the background about that and how to run the business. And it's really got me thinking about, like, I guess the future direction of the business. Like, I love coaching. I don't think I'll ever stop doing it. Like, I am 37 years old. I'm going to always have a handful of athletes. But I guess in future, it's going to be potentially, none of this is set in stone, but hiring people within strength season to be coaches. And I run the strategy and run like the direction of the business, and they kind of have coached underneath me. And maybe it's a case where people pay a little bit more to have coaching with me as someone more experienced, and maybe a little bit less to get coached by junior coaches or other people that we hire. This is very future of the business stuff. But yeah, that is me. That is at Amir Fitness. That is Strength Season Online Coaching. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to know, what content you guys want to see. Like, I have fancy mics, fancy camera, the ability to film more content for you, whether it's podcast-based, whether it's technique-based, whether it's movements and skills that you don't have in CrossFit. I'd love to know what you guys want to see, what guests to get on, what information you want. But yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for listening, like and subscribe, etc. Have a good day.